The phone rang at an hour when no mother expects good news. The storm outside was howling, battering the old clapboard house until the windows rattled in their frames. My hand shook as I reached for the receiver. "Mom?" Lydia's voice was barely a whisper, raw and broken, carried through the static. "I'm so cold. Please help me. Help my baby." Before I could form a single word, a piercing scream tore through the line, high and sharp, and then silence. The connection was gone. My heart stopped as if the storm had stolen the air from my lungs. If you are listening to my story right now, I want you to pause. Tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from. Share how this moment makes you feel. Have you ever known a fear that freezes your blood? And please, if you haven't already, subscribed to this channel so these voices, these stories continue to reach hearts everywhere. My name is Marian Foster, and I am 60 years old. For most of my life, I've been a widow tending a modest antiques shop in a quiet coastal town in Maine. I never imagined that my days of sorting through chipped porcelain and weathered furniture would be interrupted by a call that would rip open every hidden fear I carried as a mother. Lydia, my only daughter, my fragile joy, was 9 months pregnant. She was supposed to be safe at home with her husband Daniel. Instead, her cry for help came to me through a line that had gone dead. I stood frozen in the kitchen, the soft yellow glow of the lamp turning the piles of folded laundry into ghostly mounds. Outside, the storm roared louder, the rain hammering the tin roof like fists. For a heartbeat, I could not move. The stillness pressed on me like a weight until the image of Lydia huddled somewhere in the dark broke through. My hands moved before my mind caught up. I grabbed my old raincoat, pulled my late husband's truck keys from their hook by the door, and stepped into the storm. The cold slapped my face the moment I opened the door, the kind of cold that soaks into your bones. The truck's headlights sliced weakly through the curtain of rain as I drove each mile, feeling like a fight against time itself. My thoughts spun. Where was Lydia? Why had she said Daniel left her? And what about the baby? My grandchild, barely a breath in this world, already in danger. As the wipers screeched back and forth, I replayed her last words in my mind. "Help my baby." They clung to me, sharper than the storm, louder than the thunder. I pressed harder on the accelerator, though the road was slick, my knuckles white on the wheel. The world outside was chaos, but inside me there was only one command pulsing through every vein: find her before it's too late. The storm swallowed the road ahead, but I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing the old truck forward. My husband's pickup had never felt so alive beneath my hands. Its engine roared like a beast, unwilling to give in. Each mile of slick asphalt felt like a century, the wipers screeching across the windshield in a frantic rhythm, keeping time with my own racing pulse. Lydia's scream replayed in my head over and over, a cruel echo that refused to fade. The first place I drove was the hospital. Logic insisted she might have returned there. I burst inside rain, dripping from my hair onto the sterile floor, my heart hammering against my ribs. My daughter, Lydia Foster. She's due any day. Where is she? The receptionist's polite but weary shake of the head struck like a blow. Discharged this morning. Picked up by her husband, Daniel, my son-in-law, the man who vowed to love her, protect her. Then why had she been begging for me in the dead of night, rage and confusion tangled in my chest? I left without a word, boots slapping wet against the floor, the storm swallowing me once more. I drove the route between the hospital and Lydia's home, headlights cutting across sheets of rain. At every bus stop, I pulled over, shouting into the darkness. My voice felt small against the howl of the wind. "Lydia, honey." The rain answered merciless, as if mocking me. At the first stop, nothing. Just puddles reflecting the glow of the truck's weak lights. The second stop, abandoned shadows stretching long and empty. My hands clenched the wheel until my knuckles ached, my throat raw from calling her name. Then the third stop. As the headlights swept across the shelter, my breath caught. On the muddy ground near the rusted pole lay something pale, a cream-colored maternity coat, the one I had bought Lydia when she was 7 months along. I stumbled out of the truck, rain stinging my face, my legs shaking beneath me. I bent down and touched the fabric. Cold, heavy, soaked with mud, and smeared with blood. Beside it, a shattered phone, its screen splintered into 1,000 cruel shards. I picked it up, my reflection fractured into pieces across the glass. My chest tightened as if someone had pressed a fist against it. The silence around me was deafening, broken only by the drumming rain. And then I saw it. Half buried in the muck near the bench, glinting faintly beneath the street lamp, was a tiny bracelet. Pink plastic beads spelled out the letters Clara. It was the name Lydia had chosen for her baby girl. My breath shuddered out of me. This wasn't just evidence of her pain. It was proof that both she and the child had been here terrified alone. The storm seemed to close in the air so heavy I could hardly breathe. For a moment, despair threatened to crush me. But then something inside snapped into place. This was no longer a frantic search. It was a fight. I clutched the coat, the broken phone, the bracelet, and whispered into the rain, "Hold on, Lydia. I will find you. I swear it." I clutched the tiny bracelet in my palm until the edges pressed into my skin, as if pain could anchor me. The rain blurred everything, but in that blur I noticed movement, a shadow in the far corner of the shelter. My breath caught. I staggered closer, heart hammering every step, heavier than the last. There, crumpled against the cold concrete wall, was Lydia, my daughter. Her hair clung wet to her face, her lips blue, her arms wrapped tightly around a small bundle. For an instant, the world tilted. I thought my knees would give out. "Lydia!" My voice cracked, half drowned by the storm. I dropped to my knees beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then locked on mine with a flicker of recognition. "Mom!" she whispered, weaker than the rain tapping against the tin roof. I pulled back the soaked fabric from her arms and gasped. Nestled against her chest was a newborn, skin-mottled lips, pale, utterly still. My grandson. For a heartbeat, I thought I was too late. My own scream tore out of me before I could stop it. "No, no, no," I muttered, wrapping the baby in my jacket, rubbing his tiny back with desperate hands. "Stay with us, please, God." My tears mingled with the rain as I rocked him, praying for the faintest cry. Headlights cut through the storm behind me. I turned, shielding the baby. A tall man in a rain-soaked cap ran toward us. "Ma'am, I saw your truck. What happened?" His voice carried urgency, but not cruelty. "I need help, my daughter, the baby." My words tangled in my throat. He crouched, his hands steady. "I'm Tomas. I drive the rigs along this highway. Let's get them into your truck now." His calmness was a rope pulling me back from the abyss. Together, we lifted Lydia, her body limp, trembling her head against my shoulder. Tomas cradled her as if she weighed nothing, while I clutched the baby, praying for warmth in his tiny body. Rain lashed us mercilessly, but we moved as though chased by death itself. Inside the truck, I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands. My voice broke as I dialed. 911. "Please, my daughter just gave birth." "The baby's not breathing right. She's freezing. We're at the West Highway bus stop. Hurry, please hurry." The operator's calm questions felt surreal against the pounding in my ears. "Stay on the line, ma'am. Wrap them in whatever you have. Help is on the way." I pressed Lydia against me, rubbing her arms, whispering her name like a lifeline. The baby lay in my lap, wrapped in my coat, then so faint I almost misted a whimper, a fragile, broken sound, but alive. My chest collapsed with relief. Lydia's lips trembled. Her voice was barely air. "Daniel left me. He left us here." Her words sliced deeper than the storm's wind. I wanted to scream, but I held her tighter instead. "I'm here, sweetheart. I won't leave you. Not ever." Outside, the sirens finally pierced the roar of the rain, and for the first time that night, hope cut through the darkness. The wail of sirens had been my salvation that night, but in the days that followed, their echo turned into a gnawing reminder of how close I had come to losing both my daughter and my grandchild. Lydia survived. The doctors said we'd brought her just in time. The baby, Clara, tiny and fragile, fought for each breath in the neonatal ward, but she lived. And yet, as relief washed over me, a darker current pulled at my heart. Because while Lydia's body was healing, her spirit seemed broken. She barely spoke. When she did, her words were shadows. He left me. He left us. Her gaze drifted toward the window as if she was staring through the glass into a place I couldn't follow. I would sit beside her, holding her cold hand, whispering, "You're safe now, sweetheart." But inside me burned a fury I could not contain. Daniel, my son-in-law, the man who vowed to protect her, had vanished. Not a single visit, not even a call. At first I told myself there must be an explanation. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe he didn't know what had happened. But when the nurses confirmed he had signed her discharge papers that morning, picked her up, and then disappeared, the truth was undeniable. He had abandoned her, abandoned both of them. I brought Lydia and Clara back to my house once they were stable enough to leave the hospital. I thought we might finally find a pocket of peace. But peace was short-lived. 3 days later, a knock rattled my front door so hard I thought it might splinter. When I opened it, there she was, Mrs. Abernathy Daniel's mother, stiff-backed, dressed in a severe black coat despite the afternoon sun, with 2 neighbors hovering behind her like silent jurors. Her voice rang out before I could greet her. "Marian Foster, what you are doing is cruel. You've hidden my daughter-in-law away, feeding her delusions. She's suffering from postpartum hallucinations, and you're making it worse." My stomach lurched. Hallucinations? I stepped outside, refusing to let her voice contaminate my home. She gave birth alone at a bus stop in a storm. She nearly died. "And where was your son, Mrs. Abernathy? Where?" The neighbors shifted uncomfortably, but Mrs. Abernathy pressed on her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "Daniel has been frantic searching for her. You've poisoned Lydia's mind against him. She needs treatment, not your hysteria." The words stung, not because they were true, but because I saw doubt flicker in the neighbor's eyes. Doubt aimed at me, the mother who had risked everything to save her child. My throat tightened, but I forced my voice steady. "Don't you dare twist this. Lydia isn't crazy. She's a survivor. Your son abandoned her in the rain." Still, the whispers grew. In the grocery store, I caught glances traded over heads of lettuce. On the sidewalk, voices dropped when I passed. Too protective, controlling, always meddling. Their judgment clung to me like damp clothes, heavy and cold. That night, as Lydia rocked Clara silently in the dim light of my living room, I realized something bitter saving her life had only been the beginning. Now I had to fight for her truth against the lies, the whispers, and a family determined to bury what their son had done. The whispers of the neighborhood clung to me like shadows, but I refused to let them choke the truth. I had stared into my daughter's hollow eyes, heard the tremor in her voice when she said, "He left me." No accusation from Mrs. Abernathy, no gossip behind closed curtains could erase that. Still, words alone would never be enough. If Daniel could abandon Lydia in a storm and still parade as the dutiful husband, then I needed more than outrage. I needed proof. That's when I turned to Elliot, my younger brother. Elliot had always been the practical one, the mind of a fixer. He'd worked as an electronics engineer before retirement, now tinkering with gadgets in a cluttered workshop that smelled of oil and solder. When I placed Lydia's shattered phone on his desk, my voice cracked. "This is all I found at the bus stop. Can you bring it back to life?" He adjusted his glasses, studying the spiderweb of broken glass. "It'll be tricky, Marian, but if there's anything left inside, I'll find it." For hours, I sat on a stool in that dim little shop, listening to the hum of tools and Elliot's muttered calculations. Every flicker of the laptop screen felt like a heartbeat. Finally, he leaned back. "The storage is damaged, but there are fragments, messages, missed calls." He clicked and I saw Daniel's name over and over, texts, unanswered voicemails deleted. One thread stopped me cold. Lydia had begged him earlier that day not to leave her alone. His reply was chilling in its indifference. "Stop being dramatic, you'll embarrass me." I pressed a hand to my mouth. Proof, barely a glimpse, but enough to show his cruelty wasn't a figment of Lydia's imagination. Elliot wasn't done. "If you want the world to see what kind of man Daniel really is, we'll need more than broken messages. We'll need to catch him in his own house." His gaze was steady, practical, but I felt the weight of what he was suggesting. That Saturday, while Daniel escorted Lydia to the grocery store, Elliot slipped into their house using the spare key Lydia once showed me. My chest tightened as I waited in the parking lot, Clara asleep in my arms. 10 endless minutes later, Elliot texted, "All set. That night, the feed flickered onto Elliot's laptop. I saw Lydia sitting on the couch holding Clara, her face pale as candle wax. Then the door slammed. Daniel stormed in, throwing his bag to the floor. His voice was venom. "This place is a mess. You're useless. Why can't you be half the woman Serena is?" My breath caught. Serena. A name I'd never heard spoken with a bitterness that cut deeper than the storm that night. Lydia's shoulders hunched as she clutched the baby tighter, silent, under his rage. Elliot glanced at me, his voice low but firm. "This is bigger than we thought. Serena isn't just another woman, she's tied to something else. Money, a condo downtown. I've traced transfers Daniel couldn't possibly afford on his salary." The pieces clicked, each one sharper than the last cruelty infidelity fraud. The perfect husband mask was cracking, and behind it lurked something darker than I had ever imagined. The footage Elliot had captured still played in my mind, like a wound that wouldn't close. Daniel's voice lashing out, Lydia shrinking into herself, the name Serena dripping with venom. Yet while the truth was unraveling before my eyes, the world outside saw something very different. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Daniel had posted a video on social media, and the title alone made my blood boil. "When you try to be a good husband, but she calls you the villain." I forced myself to watch. There he was in the same living room where I had seen him berate my daughter, now smiling softly as he cradled Clara. He hummed a lullaby, wiped a drop of milk from Lydia's cheek as she dozed, kissed her forehead tenderly. The video was drenched in soft piano music, every frame polished like a commercial for family bliss. And at the end, his voiceover. "My wife struggles with postpartum confusion, but I'll never stop loving her." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. He wasn't just lying, he was rewriting reality. The neighbors who once whispered now shared his video with words of praise. Such a patient man. Poor Daniel. I wanted to scream, but rage alone would not save Lydia. Proof would. So I began collecting. The broken phone fragments, the hidden camera recordings, those were only the beginning. Elliot uncovered financial records, large sums funneled into an account under Serena's name. Rent for a downtown condo, spa treatments, designer clothes. It was a lifestyle Daniel's modest salary could never justify. And then came the unexpected ally, Tomas the truck driver who had helped me carry Lydia from the storm. He stopped by one evening, his cap dripping with rain. "Mrs. Foster," he said quietly, "I checked my dash cam from that night. You should see this." On the grainy screen, headlights cut across the bus stop. Daniel's silver sedan pulled up, then lurched away, leaving a figure. Lydia collapsed in the rain. My breath caught as Tomas's camera captured her crumpled form clutching her belly, abandoned in the darkness. My chest ached so sharply I pressed a hand against it, but alongside the pain was a rush of grim relief, undeniable evidence. Elliot leaned forward, his voice low. "With this, and the financial records were closing in. He won't be able to pretend much longer." Still, I sensed the fight was far from over. And I was right. The very next morning, a knock came at my door, not from a neighbor, but from a tall man in a worn trench coat. His voice was steady, professional, but carried an undercurrent of something heavier. "Mrs. Foster, I'm Detective Harris. I've been looking into Daniel Abernathy's company. There are suspicions of money laundering tied to his department." For a moment, the storm outside felt like it had moved inside me. Not only had Daniel abandoned my daughter and manipulated the world into pitying him, but he was also entangled in crimes far beyond our home. I tightened my grip on the doorknob, meeting the detective's gaze. "Then you've come to the right person," I said, my voice firm, "because I won't let him hide anymore." The footage Elliot had captured still played in my mind like a wound that wouldn't close. Daniel's voice lashing out, Lydia shrinking into herself, the name Serena dripping with venom. Yet while the truth was unraveling before my eyes, the world outside saw something very different. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Daniel had posted a video on social media, and the title alone made my blood boil. "When you try to be a good husband, but she calls you the villain." I forced myself to watch. There he was in the same living room where I had seen him berate my daughter, now smiling softly as he cradled Clara. He hummed a lullaby, wiped a drop of milk from Lydia's cheek as she dozed, kissed her forehead tenderly. The video was drenched in soft piano music, every frame polished like a commercial for family bliss. And at the end, his voiceover, "My wife struggles with postpartum confusion, but I'll never stop loving her." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. He wasn't just lying, he was rewriting reality. The neighbors who once whispered now shared his video with words of praise. Such a patient man. Poor Daniel. I wanted to scream, but rage alone would not save Lydia. Proof would. So I began collecting. The broken phone fragments, the hidden camera recordings, those were only the beginning. Elliot uncovered financial records, large sums funneled into an account under Serena's name. Rent for a downtown condo, spa treatments, designer clothes. It was a lifestyle Daniel's modest salary could never justify. And then came the unexpected ally, Tomas, the truck driver who had helped me carry Lydia from the storm. He stopped by one evening, his cap dripping with rain. "Mrs. Foster," he said quietly, "I checked my dash cam from that night. You should see this." On the grainy screen, headlights cut across the bus stop. Daniel's silver sedan pulled up, then lurched away, leaving a figure. Lydia collapsed in the rain. My breath caught as Tomas's camera captured her crumpled form, clutching her belly, abandoned in the darkness. My chest ached so sharply I pressed a hand against it. But alongside the pain was a rush of grim relief, undeniable evidence. Elliot leaned forward, his voice low. With this and the financial records were closing in, he won't be able to pretend much longer. Still, I sensed the fight was far from over. And I was right. The very next morning, a knock came at my door, not from a neighbor, but from a tall man in a worn trench coat. His voice was steady professional, but carried an undercurrent of something heavier. "Mrs. Foster, I'm Detective Harris. I've been looking into Daniel Abernathy's company. There are suspicions of money laundering tied to his department." For a moment, the storm outside felt like it had moved inside me. Not only had Daniel abandoned my daughter and manipulated the world into pitying him, but he was also entangled in crimes far beyond our home. I tightened my grip on the doorknob, meeting the detective's gaze. "Then you've come to the right person," I said, my voice firm, "because I won't let him hide anymore." When the gavel struck, the sound rang like thunder rolling away after a long, merciless storm. Daniel stood pale and rigid as the judge's voice cut through the silence, guilty on all counts: domestic abuse, financial fraud, and abandonment. He was sentenced to prison, stripped of his parental rights, barred forever from approaching Lydia or Clara. For the first time in months, I exhaled without fear clawing at my chest. The courtroom emptied slowly, neighbors avoiding my eyes, their whispers now hushed with shame. The very people who once called me hysterical now shifted in their seats, unable to meet my gaze. But I didn't crave their apology. What mattered was the trembling hand Lydia slid into mine. She didn't need to speak. Her grip told me everything. She was free. Back home, the air felt different. Lydia moved into my little house by the coast, Clara's crib tucked by the window where the sea breeze drifted in. At night, I would watch my daughter rock her child, humming softly. The shadows in her eyes hadn't vanished, but light was seeping through. Slowly, gently, she was returning to herself. And Tomas, the man who had pulled my daughter from the rain, became more than a passing stranger. He stopped by with groceries, fixed the old fence, and sometimes simply sat at our table drinking coffee while Clara cooed on his lap. His presence was quiet but steady, like the lighthouse that watched over our bay. I hadn't expected companionship at my age, but trust has a way of finding you when you need it most. Yet I knew our story couldn't end only with survival. Too many women lived in the same silence Lydia once endured. Bruises, invisible voices muted by fear. One evening, as we folded baby clothes still warm from the dryer, Lydia lifted her chin and said, "Mom, what if we start something? A place women can turn to when no one believes them." Her words struck deep. Together, we founded a small community fund, the Clara Foundation, named after the baby who had been born in the storm. Elliot helped set up the website. Tomas rallied truckers to donate, and neighbors, some still ashamed of their earlier doubt, began offering support. It wasn't grand, but it was real. A phone line, a little office, a promise that no woman would have to stand alone as Lydia once did. Months later, as the spring tide rolled in, I stood on the porch watching Clara's tiny hands reach for the sunlight, streaming through the window. Lydia joined me, her smile faint but certain. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" she asked. I wrapped an arm around her. "Every brave voice is a spark, Lydia, and sparks can save lives. The storm had taken much from us trust innocence time, but it had also forged something stronger, the courage to speak, to fight, to build. And in that courage, I found not just survival, but hope.